Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. It's about time that we had a DPS Showdown, and this time it's going to be a battle between the biggest 5-star brains in Genshin Impact, Tighnari, Alhaitham, and Nahida. With the release of our giga-brained acting Grand Sage and Scribe of the Academia, Alhaitham, we now have 3 5-star Dendro damage dealers. Now, if this were purely a battle of the wits between our Giga Omega-brained Alhaitham, our omnipotent godly Archon-brained Nahida, and our fuzzy-eared brained Tighnari, I'd have to hand this one to all of them, for they are all quite accomplished in their respective fields. However, what better way to honor their intelligence by having them compete in the complete savagery of murdering things as fast as possible in a DPS showdown? Whose brain is capable of murdering the innocent fauna of Teyvat the fastest? But before our brainiacs start touching grass and spreading death, I've got literally the perfect sponsor for you guys today, the Red Magic 8. I've always been adverse to playing Genshin Impact on my various phones. However, the Red Magic 8 has completely changed my opinion on this. On my old phone, I can barely even run Genshin Impact on low graphics, and things still take forever to load with terrible FPS. But with this phone, I was completely blown away by it, handling it on max settings without dropping a beat. Seriously, enemies load into dungeons faster than even on the PlayStation. In fact, it feels competitive to playing Genshin Impact on my PC. Heck, it can even record while playing Genshin Impact at nearly max settings. You can tell they have iterated and perfected the gaming phone formula. This phone even has a mini cooling fan and extremely useful software which allows you to bind the shoulder buttons, record stuff seamlessly, map buttons, and so much more. Unsurprisingly, this thing is rocking some of the best specs on the market, like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, plus a dedicated Red Magic gaming chip, a full AMOLED display with 960Hz multi-finger touch sampling rate, and an under-display selfie camera that won't leave an annoying hole punch or notch on your phone screen. A 20,000 RPM turbo fan, tons of storage, and even more stuff to optimize your mobile gaming experience. Anyway, if you're looking for the smoothest gaming experience on mobile out there, then the Red Magic 8 is perfect for you. Just smash that link down below to check out this state-of-the-art gaming phone. Huge thanks to Red Magic for sponsoring today's video. So let's familiarize ourselves with the combat-ready scholars of Sumeru and their builds. Throughout this video, my Giga Omega-brained Alhaitham is using the Light of Foliar Incision at Refinement 5. He is using the Gilded Dreams for most of it, and he's at Constellation 6, and his talents are triple crowned. Yes, this was on the media server, by the way, where I have no impulse control when it comes to resources. Thinking of who's next leads us to the omnipotent Archon-brained Nahida. It's notable that her talents are only at 9, 12, and 12, so she is missing a few percentage points of her overall damage output. And last but certainly not the unfluffiest is our fluffiest eared brained Tighnari. He is using either the Gilded Dreams or the Wanderer's Troop, depending on the situation. His talents are also only at 9, 12, and 12, so we can see that where I do use my Alhaitham has a small edge over the other two based on his talents. We also have some clips from our good friend of the channel, Mr. 89. In his own words, he's back after spending 2 years recovering from Xiao trauma, and Alhaitham happened to strike his fancy, so his Alhaitham is here to help with a couple of runs. And let's also annoy the living bejeebies out of Mr. 89 by smashing that subscribe button at his YouTube channel. I'm sure it'll send him a notification for each one that he gets, so let's blow that notification box of his up. And while you're squishing subscribe buttons, squish my subscribe button like how Nahida squishes Dendro buttons. Seriously, huge thanks to you, as button squishing really motivates me to squish out more content like this. But before we get our minds blown, it's everyone's favorite part of the video, the disclaimers.
All runs in this video can be improved. I simply do each of these runs a few times and pick the best time for each of the situations. I'm not here to grind infinitely, just save a few frames to a few seconds. Each of these runs are done to the best of my abilities and problem solving within a reasonable amount of time. This is simply an anecdotal comparison between these characters and my levels of investment, problem solving, and skill. Because my characters are all at Constellation 6 Refinement 5, this is not an accurate reflection of their power levels at lower constellations. Just because character A is better than character B in a specific scenario does not mean that character A is better than character B. Please take everything with a giant grain of salt.
Also, the times displayed on the screen are in frames, which are 1/60th of a second, although sometimes I'll read them out as decimals. How else are we going to start this off besides by murdering our cute and innocent Regisfine friend? Well, if you know much about Alhaitham, he does need some ramp up time, especially for his Constellation 6. I tried many different combos and approaches from EQ to E plunge Q to Q tap E, however the fastest time was actually this instant plunge combo. There's an inconsistent trick where sometimes Alhaitham will do an instant plunge like this one, which speeds up the process for getting 2 waves of mirrors to come out. Fancy parlor tricks aside, our Omega-brained acting Grand Sage managed to commit plant-on-plant war crimes in just 5.55 seconds. And now for the Archon of all brains, Nahida. Nahida's elemental burst also happens to have a very long, albeit beautiful, burst animation. Afterwards, Nahida needs to jump on her Dendro button many times to output her Constellation 6's damage. It's super important to note here though, that this is a raw Dendro damage showcase. That means that Nahida's Tri-Karma Purification, which is an integral part of her kit, doesn't even trigger. Anyway, even without her Tri-Karma Purification, Nahida was able to squish button the Regisvine to death in 5.92 seconds. Our tall-eared chap, Tighnari, has a great amount of front-loaded Dendro damage, and although his elemental burst is admittingly slow, his charge attacks are blistering fast. After outputting more green numbers than the mind can keep up with, our fuzzy-eared, powered Brainiac thought of his Regisvine murdering thesis in just 4.42 seconds. But we all know that the Regisvine is not enough for a full days of food in a DPS Showdown, hence why it's time for lunch, the robot chicken. We'll also use a Deepwood Memories Kuki Shinobu for all 3 of them, so that way these Brainiacs can actually spread their knowledge. This combo is Alhaitham's bread and butter front-loaded Constellation 6 combo, as the follow-up charge attack allows him to activate his Constellation 6. Once his Giga-brained brain was able to imagine his Constellation 6 in the working order, Alhaitham's 3 mirror waves are doing up to 75,000 damage per spread. Quite impressive. Even for such a short-lived fight for a character that needs a significant amount of ramp-up time, Alhaitham performed very well with his 7.65 second clear time. But wait, let's not forget about our Dendro Archon, Greater Lord Rukhadevata. Lesser Lord Kusanali. Now Nahida can actually activate her Tri-Karma Purification thanks to Quicken being on our robot chicken lunch. Nahida isn't just amazing at knowing everything, she's also great at garnishing robot chickens, as she hopscotched our robot chicken's lifespan away in just 7.07 seconds. But wait again, we still have one more afterthought to think about, Tighnari. Tighnari could have had a blistering fast clear time if only his damage was high enough to single rotation our robot chicken lunch, and perhaps with some better artifacts and some crowns, he'd be able to accomplish that. But alas, we were just a bit short of such an accomplishment and required a manually fully charged charge shot to finish garnishing our robot chicken meal in 6.97 seconds. And now for a full team comparison against our dinner, the giant Dorito. A huge thanks to Mr. 89 for his eloquent Alhaitham run. As we can see, Alhaitham has absolutely no issue dishing out huge amounts of damage in a very short amount of time. What's incredible about this is that his potential DPS window can be as short as just a few seconds like this clip, or as long as 12 to 18 seconds. Well, not much is going to survive such a prolonged onslaught, so Mr. 89 used Alhaitham's front-loaded Constellation 6 combo for this, a highly intelligent 12.8 second clear time. Now Nahida is an interesting case where she doesn't have a great 4th support character. Unlike Alhaitham and Tighnari who use Nahida as their support, Nahida can't use Nahida as her own support. So I brought Yelan to make this team into a Hyperbloom team. With a gazillion large Dendro numbers, Hyperblooms, and by not even using Yelan's Constellation 6 here, this Hyperbloom Nahida crushed our very unhealthy giant Dorito dinner into dust in an extremely competitive 12.98 seconds. And last but not least is Mr. Tighnari himself. Tighnari is great at doing a lot of front-loaded damage in a short amount of time, but unlike Alhaitham, who can last a really long time, Tighnari is much more intense and finishes very quickly. After Tighnari runs out of juice, we can use our sub DPS Nahida to jump on a button a couple of times to finish off our Dorito dinner in 11.9 seconds. And up next we have our full version 3.4 Abyss 12 top half run. Well now, unsurprisingly, all three teams completed this in very similar amounts of time. This particular Abyss 12 is super Dendro friendly and super Nahida friendly. Nahida is incredible at disposing of a couple of waves of enemies, and Alhaitham is also great at doing this too. Between Alhaitham and Nahida, their giant brains destroyed the 4 robots very quickly. 1232 is a chamber where Alhaitham can make great use of his ability to be played as either a burst DPS character to wipe out the first wave, and then both Yae Miko and Nahida are ridiculously good for the super spread out giant burb and bug. For 1231, after many attempts, this purely front-loaded burst approach allowed him to do a ton of burst DPS while he's off field. This allows Nahida to come onto field to squish away our Dendro friend, and in total, Alhaitham's run took 50 seconds. Tighnari's run felt really good to execute, as it's very satisfying to machine gun down his enemies with his instant charge shots thanks to his Constellation 6. Unsurprisingly, Tighnari was effortlessly able to dispose of some old toy robots in 1211, but of course with the help of Nahida as mostly a sub DPS character to take care of a couple robots herself. 1221 is a similar story to Alhaitham's. Tighnari is able to efficiently gun down the first wave of samurais, and since Nahida is the ideal teammate for Tighnari, we do use her abilities to great effect against the 2 giant creatures. Tighnari's ease cooldown is back in time for him to quickly finish off the remaining slivers of health on the beasts. And of course, for the Dorito bot, Tighnari chunks most of its hit points, but is just short of being able to finish it off. So we call in Nahida to finish off the last remaining bit of health. And now, well, it's finally Nahida's turn. Funnily enough, despite Nahida being an ideal 4th slot for the other 2, Nahida doesn't really have an ideal 4th slot that's not either Tighnari or Alhaitham. So I decided to use Yelan to run a Hyper Bloom team. Now I know a lot of people get pretty upset whenever Yelan is involved in a DPS showdown, but here she is largely actually being used as a sub DPS character. Remember kids, use your Yelan responsibly. Moderate Yelan use is highly recommended, but excessive amounts of Yelan will get people upset. Besides, without Viridescent Veneer and Kazuha, Yelan's damage is much more reasonably in line with that of an actual sub DPS character. In 1221, thanks to Yelan's passive amping up Nahida's damage, Nahida effortlessly murdered the giant beasts, and then I spent a bit of time to battery up the team. 1231 is very similar to the previous Dorito showcase, but this time with Yae Miko instead of Mona, and unsurprisingly, this team was able to effortlessly clean up our Dorito friend. So yeah, this was an interesting DPS showdown since one of the contestants happened to be the best sub DPS option for the other 2. Mr. 89 and I do have clips from the previous 3.3 Abyss 12 as well as another point of reference. Anyway, looking at these results, we can see that all 3 of them are extremely similar to each other. They definitely each have their own strengths and weaknesses, but when pushed to the limits at whale levels, they end up outputting very similar amounts of damage. Now I do have to say that despite being a sub DPS, Nahida's performance being on par with that of primary damage dealers like Alhaitham and Tighnari is very impressive, but that's not to take away from our two husbanders, because honestly, they are best paired with Nahida and form an incredibly powerful Dendro team. Overall, Tighnari is an incredible front-loaded damage dealer, taking little field time to dish out his damage. However, when he runs out of steam, his brain power falls off a cliff, but his cooldowns are much shorter than Alhaitham's. Alhaitham, on the other hand, is an interesting character, able to provide either a hefty amount of front-loaded damage or a great amount of sustained damage. He also facilitates creative rotations due to his ability to swap out during his burst and swap back in to still grab his mirrors. He does have a bit more of energy problems though than the other two. As for Nahida, well, she's the glue that really sticks Dendro teams together, and she's still a very capable and self-sufficient focal point for this team as well. So who's the real winner of this DPS Showdown? Honestly, it's, drumroll please, Fischl. That's right, Amy was actually invaluable for the 3.4 Abyss 12 top half runs. Her ability to activate Elegy and tag everything everywhere with Deepwood Memories is one of the reasons that those teams were able to succeed. This is the first time that I can recall where it was actually completely optimal for me to use Fischl in a Constellation 6 5-star character DPS Showdown. Hats off to the real winner of today's DPS Showdown, the fuzziest of all, the Oz dispenser herself, Fischl. Oh, and don't forget to check out today's sponsor, Red Magic. Seriously, I didn't even know Genshin Impact could run so smoothly on a phone. And also check out Mr. 89's YouTube channel down below for some more Alhaitham gameplay and just a bunch of variety speedruns. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.